Good morning. Thank you all for coming. We have a full program, so while you're eating, we're going to start this. My name is Peter Foreman, and I have the pleasure of serving as president of the South Shore Chamber of Commerce. And I want to welcome you all to our contribution to National Small Business Week, when we can take special note of the importance of the most important players of our economy, small businesses. I want to give you a programming note and remind you that next Thursday we will be having another 744 here at the Lantana with Gabriel Gomez, the Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate. And an invitation has been extended to Congressman Markey to also address the Chamber, and we're waiting to hear from him. I want to thank all of the Chamber's partners who bring us so much of the programming that benefit our members. Today's chairman's partner sponsor for this breakfast is Eastern Bank. Eastern contributes to the South Shore in so many ways. Not only are they our sponsor for this breakfast, but the president of Eastern Bank is also the chairman of the board of the Chamber of Commerce. It's my pleasure to introduce our chairman and our breakfast sponsor this morning. Please welcome Bob Rivers.
Well, thank you, Peter, and good morning. Good morning to all of you. Thank you all for being here and taking time out of what is always very busy schedules here in the spring to be here. You know, as you may know, this week marks the 50th anniversary of National Small Business Week. Started by President Kennedy in 1963, National Small Business Week is an annual celebration recognizing the important economic contributions of our nation's 27 million entrepreneurs and small businesses, which represent 99.7% of all U.S. employers and more than half of private sector GDP. Despite its long history, Peter pointed out to me the other day that National Small Business Week is not yet a Hallmark holiday. After all, how many of you have received cards or flowers this week acknowledging and congratulating you on being small businesses? Probably not many. So this is all the more reason that we come together once again in May to celebrate all of you, because it's small business that creates the jobs, inspires innovation, and grows the deep grassroots that hold our communities together. And that is the major reason why Eastern is such a big believer in what the South Shore Chamber of Commerce does. The Chamber is not only a driving force in advocating for regional economic development, both formal and informal ways. Peter and his team help many small businesses grow. One of the most impressive programs we have is actually one of the Chamber's best-kept secrets, the Athena PowerLink program. This is an amazing program because of the incredible commitment of mentor volunteers and selected women-owned businesses to build success stories, one business at a time. To explain the program, I'd like to introduce you all to Sharon Moutry, Vice President of Sales for Bay Copy and Chair of the Athena PowerLink program. Sharon?
Good morning, and thank you. Even though it is called a secret, the Athena PowerLink program has been part of the South Shore Chamber of Commerce for over 10 years. It is a nationally recognized program. We are one of the 4 committees that are known under the Women's Business Connection. Sandy Almeida is the chair of that committee. And what we've been doing is that we do work with women business owners. The Chamber has made a really strong commitment to women business owners and small businesses, and this is just one way that they do it. And the way we do it is what we do is we go out and we work with the women, and let's be honest, anybody who has enough courage and to be able to start a business in the last 5 years in itself is really quite amazing. They are very good at what they do. But as your company starts growing, other issues come on the table as well. They might now be faced with facility issues, they've got legal issues, they might have to figure out how to negotiate contracts, how to deal with HR, and all these other things. And they're not quite sure how to handle it. The number one thing that we hear from our women business owners is they just don't know what they don't know. And they're not quite sure what questions to ask. And that's how we can help. What we do is we hold up a mirror to reflect back the company to them and to be able to identify the areas that they need help in. Once that is done, we put together a panel of some of the leading experts on the South Shore. We'll work with them in areas such as sales and marketing, legal, all the areas that we just discussed. And what these experts do is they work with them for a solid year pro bono. They share their expertise, their talent, and their knowledge. Our goal is not to do the work for the women business owner, but is to teach them so that they can do it for themselves. And it's with a great deal of pleasure I would like to introduce the panel that has been working with Framers Edge for the last year. And when I call your name, if you would please stand up. Jackie Collins, who is the panel coordinator, Partners for Performance. I apologize, I'm going to cheat. I'm supposed to put this up here. We also have Barry, if you could please remain standing. Jackie, back up you go. Barry McGuire from KAF Group. I have Lisa Morrissey from Lido Consulting Group. I have Allison Edman from Waypoint Accounting Solutions, who unfortunately could not join us today. And we also had Noreen Carey Neville from Partners Benefit Group, who also couldn't join us today. But these guys have been working with Framers Edge for the last year, and we'd like to thank you very much for all your hard work and your commitment to the program. Now I'd like to invite up Susan and Annette, our most recent graduates from the Athena program, Framers Edge. And if anybody would like to learn some more about Athena or more about Framers Edge, you'll see a marketing piece on your table that would be more than happy to definitely tell you more about it, or come up to any one of us and we'd like to talk to you about it as well. So on behalf of the South Shore Chamber of Commerce, the Women's Business Connection, and the governing body of the Athena PowerLink program, it is with great pleasure that I present to you this recognition piece to acknowledge all the hard work that you guys have done in the last year to make the leap from the women business owner to the CEO of Framers Edge.
We just want to say thank you to our panel, who really showed us what we needed to do and how to get it done, mostly how to get it done, and the whole Athena PowerLink group, and the South Shore Chamber for sponsoring the Athena PowerLink. Thank you very much.
Well, once again, congratulations to you, Sue and Annette, on this recognition. Best wishes for your continued success. Sharon, thanks for that great presentation. If you had the view that I had from behind the podium, you would be further amazed to watch Sharon do all of that without a single note. And when she got to mentioning the individual names and still didn't have a note, I was like, oh my God, you've got to be. So I was glad you became human again by actually getting a list to read. It made me feel a lot better. You know, after hearing the Framers Edge story, it's not surprising to know that the majority of women-owned businesses in the U.S. are growing at a rate 50% higher than that of small businesses overall. Today, women-owned businesses represent over 30% of U.S. small businesses, with an economic impact of nearly $3 trillion annually. And to put that in some perspective, if U.S.-based women-owned businesses were their own country, they would have the 5th largest GDP in the world, trailing closely behind Germany, and ahead of countries like France, the United Kingdom, and Italy. It is with this in mind, I'd also like to recognize again the Chamber's Women's Business Connection, whose leadership has joined us this morning. Thank you for being here. So with that, please enjoy your breakfast, and we'll continue the program in about 10-15 minutes.
All right, if we can resume the program, I'm glad to see everybody's connecting with old friends in the hall. That's an important part of any of our events, is the chance to get to say hello to people. Just remind everybody, if you are somewhat new to our events, we will have a question and answer period following our speakers' comments. There are blank index cards on your tables, and feel free to write some questions, and when we get to the appropriate spot in the program, we will have staff and volunteers circulate. Just raise your cards. We'll collect the questions and then try to get through as many as we can. And I would like to introduce a special guest I saw come in into the hall a few minutes ago, the District Attorney of Norfolk County, Mike Morrissey. Where is the District Attorney? So those of you who had speeding tickets getting here, Mike will open up shop afterwards outside. Now, occasionally, the Chamber has recognized public officials and government agencies who have done outstanding service with public service awards. These are given to officials who we feel have made significant contributions to the Chamber or the South Shore. And it's fitting that for National Small Business Week, we would use this occasion to recognize the Boston office of the SBA and its regional director, Bob Nelson. Can I ask Bob Nelson and Bob Rivers to join me up front for this award? I was talking to Bob during breakfast, and he was commenting how so many people don't know everything the SBA does, and I said it's a lot like the Chamber. Everybody comes in it through one door, and they just don't realize how many rooms there are in our organizations and what we do. And the SBA is a great example of that. They have been doing an impressive job helping small businesses, especially during the financial crisis of the last few years, the recession, and even during natural disasters when small businesses take heavy blows and need some extra help getting back on their feet. During the past few years, the SBA has shown creativity and initiative in redesigning some of its products and services and introducing new products and services to respond to the changing challenges that face startups and small businesses in all stages of their growth. The Boston office has proven to be a real leader among SBA offices and is currently the third most active of the 68 SBA district offices around the country, third most active with 504 and 7A small business loans. Last year, they produced 311 loans in Massachusetts for the 504 program and another 1,500 with the 7A loans. These are all very important to small businesses. And I can tell you, being a servicing partner, that they push hard to get those out the door and work with us in making them available to small businesses. They've also been very active partners with the South Shore, on the South Shore, and with the Chamber. One of the benefits of our sister corporation, the South Shore Economic Development Corporation, chaired by Wynn Sargent, is our ability to service the 504 loans along with our partners at Business Development Corporation. The SBA has always been also has a very effective business advisory program, the Small Business Development Center, with Mark Aglio in our area, who services many of our clients individually. The SBA is an exception to that old joke about an agency that says, we're from the government and we're here to help. The SBA actually does help because they really do see small business as future job creators. The Boston office has been ably led by Bob Nelson since 2007 with the valuable assistance of Ann Hunt, who we work with very closely, who is joining us today. And it's our pleasure to recognize your contributions to the South Shore and small businesses with our 2013 Public Service Award. Thank you, Bob.
Good morning, everyone. I absolutely believe what Peter said. I see the impact that the SBA makes day in and day out, and it's one of the joys that I have when I go around the state helping small businesses and meeting small businesses. But Peter, thank you and the South Shore Chamber for recognizing the good work of the Massachusetts SBA District Office. I can tell you that my staff has been and will continue to work in overdrive to help small businesses with the delivery of our programs across the Commonwealth. Very proud of the staff that I have working for me. And Ann Hunt, if you can raise your hand. Ann is my Assistant District Director on the lender relations side, works with many of the banks and training them and getting them familiar with our programs. So Ann, thank you for what you do on the loan side. But as many of you who have heard me talk about the small business team in Massachusetts, I talk about that we have a fantastic small business team. And when I'm talking about the team, I'm not just talking about the SBA staff. I'm talking about the SBA Funded Resource Partner Network, the SCORE organization, the Small Business Development Centers, the Center for Women in Enterprise, our Veterans Business Outreach Center, but also the many chambers that we have strong relationships with, such as South Shore Chamber. But I can't fail to mention all of the lenders that we have here in the Commonwealth who are helping to deliver the SBA loan programs to small businesses. And as was mentioned earlier, at the height of the crisis and continuing, we're really delivering. But we're doing it with your help. The SBA is not making the loans. You're the ones that are making the loans, but you're doing it with the help and the support of the SBA guarantee. But I want to thank you all for this award, and I'm accepting it on behalf of my staff. But I want to thank you for all of your hard work, because you're making the Massachusetts SBA to stand out against its peers and to shine. So thank you for all of your hard work. And now it's my distinct pleasure to make a very special announcement. As Bob Rivers mentioned earlier, every year since 1963, the President of the United States has made a proclamation for National Small Business Week to recognize the hard work of entrepreneurs, small business owners, and small business champions who across this country are helping us to get stabilized and to start growing and creating jobs. And during this year, SBA is actually going to be celebrating with events that are taking place June 17th through 21st all across the country, and it's going to culminate with a big celebration on Friday, June 21st. And very pleased to announce that Eastern Bank will be in Washington, D.C. with me. They are being recognized with a national award. This is extremely significant. It's something that I'm very proud of Eastern Bank and their small business team. The entire small business team at Eastern Bank is committed to small business, and they are being recognized with the National 7A Lender of the Year Award. So if you could all please join me in congratulating Bob Rivers and Eastern Bank for what they do. So thank you all again for the recognition.
Well, thank you, Bob. Thank you for those kind words. On behalf of all of my colleagues at Eastern, we are both humbled and greatly appreciative of this recognition, which is a reflection not only of a highly focused team effort, particularly by our business bankers and our branch managers, but our partnership really with you and Ann and your team at the Massachusetts District Office. Obviously, we couldn't have done it without you, and it's your encouragement and guidance that really helps us help others, so thank you for that. You know, from our very beginning, Eastern Bank's mission over the past 195 years has been to serve the needs of the underserved by providing access to credit and to the banking system overall. The essence of this original mission is very much alive today, not only in the form of affordable products and services such as free checking, but in our strong commitment to the growth of small businesses. In 2012, Eastern was the #1 small business administration lender in Massachusetts for the 4th consecutive year, as well as the #1 SBA lender in all of New England for the 3rd consecutive year, despite the fact all of our branches are located within just Eastern Massachusetts. In fact, Eastern was actually the 12th largest SBA lender in the United States, making more loans than many of our largest competitors did throughout their entire footprint, both regionally and nationally. Since the onset of the Great Recession in 2008, Eastern small business lending has increased more than 7 times. But we haven't stopped there. Recognizing that many businesses, particularly smaller startups, do not yet qualify for the SBA's programs, we entered into an exclusive arrangement last year with Axion USA, a leading microfinance lender, to place their representatives in all of our banking offices in order to provide more affordable loans to entrepreneurs. Supporting small business is the key to our economic recovery, particularly here in the South Shore, where growth potential represented by small business is very significant, as we all know. Ultimately, it will only be by putting people back to work that our economy will be placed on a more positive and sustainable path. It is because of a shared commitment to job growth, supporting small businesses, in particular those that are women or minority-owned, and the importance of community, that it is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker today, our Treasurer of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Steve Grossman. As many of you know, Steve brings to the office of Treasurer a family heritage of public service, a lifetime dedicated to helping others, and years of experience as a hardworking businessman with a sense of responsibility for the well-being of his colleagues and his community. He is committed to using the full potential of the Treasurer's office to protect the public's money, to help create jobs, to boost small businesses, and bring new standards of transparency and disclosure to state government. One of his most notable achievements has been the establishment of the Small Business Banking Partnership, which uses Treasury cash reserve funds to help Massachusetts small businesses and promote job creation. To date, $316 million has been deposited in 52 community banks statewide, including Eastern and many others here on the South Shore, which has helped to generate almost 5,000 small business loans, totaling $705 million. In addition, by delivering on his promise to put all Treasury contracts out to competitive bid, he has saved taxpayers over $11 million in reduced service fees and administrative costs. As part of this process, Treasurer Grossman has taken steps to give women and minority-owned firms higher priority in the state's investment strategy, appointing the first such firm to act as lead manager on a state bond issue, while leading an effort to change the Commonwealth's guidelines related to companies in which it invests, including language related to requiring an increased presence of women and minorities in the boardroom and the executive suite. Prior to being elected treasurer in 2010, Steve spent 35 years creating jobs, managing money, dealing with crises, and finding common sense solutions, things that all of us here do every day, as CEO of Grossman Marketing Group in Somerville, a 102-year-old, fourth-generation family business. It is now my great pleasure to present to all of you our treasurer, Steve Grossman.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much, Bob. You know something about Eastern Bank. We know what Eastern Bank does in the small business lending arena. You've heard about the relationship between Eastern Bank and the SBA, and there are indeed many other banks on the South Shore, both those that are headquartered here and those who have a major presence here, who have done a great deal to accelerate small business growth, economic development, and job creation. What you may not know about Bob is that Bob is, at heart, somebody who believes that you don't just build community by investing money in small businesses that are creditworthy. You do it by investing hard-earned shareholders' resources in the charitable and philanthropic and community-minded activities that build strong, vibrant, healthy communities. I see Bob everywhere. He is the face of Eastern Bank throughout the entire area in which Eastern Bank operates, and it's a big area in which they operate. I saw him last night at a dinner that celebrated empowering women by creating equal pay for equal work for women. Lily Ledbetter was there the person whose name is on the act that is designed to create equal pay for equal work for women. 77 cents of every dollar that men make nationally, 81 or 80 cents in Massachusetts, and Bob was there last night. Everywhere there are things to do and communities to build and people to empower, Bob is there. I was privileged to be the commencement speaker a number of years ago at Curry College, and Ken Quigley, one of the great educators in our Commonwealth, now and is, I think, coming up to his 19th year as president of Curry College. Ken Quigley is here, and Ken was kind enough to invite me to be the commencement speaker one year. And I thought about other commencement speakers, and I thought about what they said, and I thought about what Woodrow Wilson, before he became president of the United States, he was president of Princeton University. And during a commencement address over 100 years ago, he said the following: set out to fulfill obligations, to do only what you know you ought to do, and your life will be filled with weariness of spirit. Only what you volunteer has the springs of pleasure in it. And he concluded by saying, these are the things you do because you want to do them, the things your spirit has chosen for its satisfaction. There isn't anybody in this room who doesn't understand that. There isn't anybody in this room, whether it's Peter Foreman, who leads this organization, who's a community builder, whether it's politics or in the private sector, or any one of you, but Bob Rivers is a role model of a community builder who chooses for his satisfaction and for the benefit of his shareholders to do the right thing for the community. That's how we build strong, vibrant communities. Bob, you are a dear, dear friend, and we are privileged to have you as the chairman of this organization. Bob Rivers. So I had the chance to speak at a 744 breakfast about 10 or 11 or 12 years ago, and it took me 11 or 12 years to get back into the big time, back into the major leagues, because the South Shore Chamber is the major leagues. And it's the major leagues because there's a spirit of innovation and imagination here among its leader and its board that is a model for chambers all over the Commonwealth. I was a member of two chambers when I ran Grossman Marketing, Somerville Chamber and the Greater Boston Chamber. And so I saw how chambers work together to achieve goals that are going to enrich and enlarge and enhance the life of the business community and make us more profitable and make us more successful. And I want to particularly commend Peter and his colleague John Hurst, the head of the Retailers Association, for something they are trying to accomplish against overwhelming odds. Because you see, in 1996, the legislature passed a piece of legislation in Massachusetts, a wrong-headed piece of legislation, that denied small businesses the opportunity to come together and do group purchasing of health insurance, cooperative buying of health insurance. We all know the principle. If you have 4 employees and you go out to buy health insurance, you're going to get high rates. But if you were insuring 1,000 employees or 2,000 employees in a group, you're going to get better rates. It's just common sense. Group buying, bulk buying of insurance, of any product. So the legislature changed the law and created a pilot program a couple of years ago, and we all thought that that could save the small business sector of the economy as much as 10 to 15% of the cost of their health insurance. It was a common sense solution to a huge problem that small businesses have that impede the ability of small businesses to grow, develop, hire more people, create jobs, and create more economic opportunity and be profitable. So what happened? The bill passed, and people started to go out and create these cooperative groups. And needless to say, Peter and John Hurst were the leaders, 2 of the leaders to make this happen. Then Obamacare took over. And while I agree in the fundamental principles of Obamacare, and I support Obamacare because it will insure 30 million Americans who were not otherwise insured, and make sure that people with prior conditions are insured, 2 fundamental principles that I think are critical to making sure that everybody in America has health insurance, there are always laws of unintended consequences. And the law of unintended consequences is the rating factors that are used here in Massachusetts to define what a group purchasing discount might look like, include things like wellness, for example. Makes sense, right? You put a wellness program in place in your company, your employees are healthier, there are less expenses for health care, and you should get a discount. But the Accountable Care Act, unfortunately, does not allow that rating factor. And Peter and John Hurst have gone to Washington again and again and again to lobby. They've had a little bit of a success. They've gotten a 3-year ramp up to this. But 3 years from now is a very short time. In the life history of companies and your businesses, 3 years passes in a flash. What we are looking for is a permanent willingness to accept the rating factors here in Massachusetts. We created healthcare reform here in Massachusetts. We created something truly distinguished for small businesses. It should be something that we are allowed to implement for the benefit of every small business. And Peter, thank you for everything you continue to do with John Hurst, and I will stand with you every step of the way to give small businesses the kind of breaks that they need in the purchasing of small business insurance. It's the right thing to do, it's the common sense thing to do, and I don't care who in Washington I have to anger or irritate. I'll be with you and John Hurst every step of the way. Thank you so much, Peter. So every one of us has a story. We all came from someplace. If I had time and asked a few people here who are small business owners to tell the story, there would be some amazing stories told. My story starts in 1900. My grandfather, Max Grossman, was an immigrant. He came here with his family from Russia. They were fleeing persecution, like so many of our grandparents or great-grandparents or parents. And he moved to East Boston, and his mother ran a little fruit stand. He was the second youngest of 13 kids, and they were poor, like everybody was in those days. He was so poor, as a matter of fact, that after the 6th grade, his mother did something that none of us could imagine. She told Max, you got to go to work. So Max went to work selling newspapers and shining shoes on the East Boston ferry boat, never went back to school. Then he got a job delivering envelopes for a company called Boston Envelope Company. But he says, I don't want to deliver envelopes all my life, I want to sell envelopes. So he got a job as a salesman. And he said, I don't want to just sell envelopes for somebody else. I want to start my own business. So in 1910, Max started his own business, Mass Envelope Company. 103 years, 4 generations. I'm proud that my 2 sons, David and Ben, now run the business. In 103 years, you start to build relationships with your customers, but you also define for your future generations, your children and your children's children, your values. 50 years ago this spring, a month before he had a stroke and died, he took me to breakfast, and he said, Steve, there were 4 things I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to have a healthy family. I wanted to educate my children. I wanted to own my own business. And I wanted to give something back to the community. Most important conversation I ever had in my entire life, because it defined the things that matter in a fulfilling, rich life. Family, education, productive hard work, and never forget giving something back to the community. Politics has been one of the vehicles that I've used to give something back to the community. I was privileged to be CEO of the company for 35 years. But in 2009, in the middle of the worst recession in 75 years, I said, I'm going to run for office. The Treasurer of the Commonwealth was running for a higher office. There was a vacancy. And I said, I hope I can do something to help this Commonwealth during these tough times. I've run a business. I've created jobs. I've managed money. I've borrowed money. I even paid it back. So I ran, and I was privileged to be elected in 2010, and I took office in 2011. The day I took office, I stood up in front of the people of the Commonwealth and laid out some fundamental principles that to me are the anchors of what we try to do every single day at Treasury, and by extension, we should be doing throughout state government. First of all, there are 6,646,000 people who live in this Commonwealth. Every one of them is a customer. At least that's the way I think they should be treated. Every one of you is a customer. We all have customers. Customers stay with you because of 4 things: great service, great value, great quality, and professionalism in every way, shape, and form. That's what we offer. And if a bank or an insurance company or any other company offers service, quality, value, and professionalism, you're going to keep those customers for a long time. Government should think about its customers and its citizens in exactly the same way. Peter Tedeschi leaned over to me while we were talking at breakfast, and he said, you know, great pick, Paul Sternberg, bringing him back as the executive director, the CEO of the lottery. He does a great job because Paul Sternberg is customer-friendly and customer-centric. Whatever the customer needs, the customer gets. Peter's one of the largest companies of his type in the state, therefore one of the largest sellers of lottery products. And one of the things that we were able to do by reforming Treasury and by bringing a new management team in, particularly a new CEO, is to think about every one of our 7,400 retailers as the most important asset we have. Not surprisingly, sales of the lottery have grown significantly. Last year, we generated $984 million in profit, and every bit of that goes right back to the 351 cities and towns of this Commonwealth in unrestricted local aid. It is the lifeblood of every community in which each of you lives. So nothing could be a better validator of the customer-centric, customer-facing, customer-friendly, however you define it, approach of the lottery, and by extension of Treasury, than an important customer saying, by the way, he is great. He thinks about the customer all the time. So principle number one, customer-friendly, customer-facing. Think of the people and the businesses of this Commonwealth as your customers. Second, promote economic opportunity, make sure it's widely shared, and never forget that immigrant entrepreneurship is going to be the great story of the 21st century in Massachusetts and everywhere else, not only in our 26 gateway communities, but everywhere. Bob knows that, every banker knows that, every one of us knows that. And immigrant entrepreneurship is something that we celebrate. I was privileged to speak just last week at the Immigrant Entrepreneurship Awards dinner, and I thought about the 26 nominees and the 3 winners and what they are doing to create jobs, to create economic opportunity, as my grandfather had done 4 generations ago. And history repeats itself over and over again. And one of the reasons we created the Small Business Banking Partnership was because of an answer I got to a question. When I became treasurer, I said, where are the Commonwealth's reserve deposits? Answer, in a money market fund. I said, I know that, but where do the money market fund folks deposit the money? It might interest you and shock you to know that 60% of the state's reserve deposits are invested in banks in Europe, Australia, and Asia. I said, something's wrong with this picture. Massachusetts taxpayers' money should be deposited in Massachusetts banks to be loaned to credit-worthy small businesses here in Massachusetts to create jobs right here at home. Fundamental principle. We've got 153 community banks in this Commonwealth. If you think about the statistics back in 2008 and 2009, these are not my numbers. This is the Mass Bankers Association's numbers. The biggest banks in America cut their lending in Massachusetts by $1 billion. Who stepped in? Small banks, local banks, community banks, regional banks, credit unions, and put that $1 billion back into the economy. We're coming out of this recession better than most states. We fell less, with less of a thud than other states, measured by sales tax revenues and unemployment, in large measure because you had a banking system that was healthy as it's ever been, with lots of cash, and they were prepared to loan that money. Bob gave you the statistics. I won't repeat the statistics, but numbers only tell part of the story. What really tells the story is a story. And I'm privileged this morning to be able to tell you the story of a small business in Weymouth called Stone Design. I got a call one day from John Boucher, president of South Shore Savings Bank, and John said, would you come over to Weymouth and help me present a loan to a small business owner? I said, I'd be thrilled. So I came over on a misty, rainy day, pulled up in front of Stone Design, and met the owner, Wavu. Wavu told me his story, and it is an extraordinary story. Wavu came to the United States in 1991. Now you might think he came to join a brother or a sister because he had a spouse here, or some reason that was family related. No. Wavu came here without language skills, without a craft, without a spouse, without children, because he had been told, you come to the United States, you come work in the United States, you come build something, you work 90, 100 hours a week, and you can make something out of yourself, the way my grandfather did, the way all of our grandparents did, or parents, or great-grandparents. So Wavu came here in 1991. Along the way, he met a master craftsman, an Irish immigrant, stonecutter named Chris Burns, who ironically and coincidentally had fought in the United States Army in Vietnam back in 1969. They met each other, and they worked together. Wavu owns the business, Chris is the general manager, and they built this wonderful business. Stone Design cuts stone. If you want a new bathroom, and you want a piece of granite on the counter, or you want a new outdoor grill, or you want a new kitchen island, and you want to expand and blow out your kitchen, you'd bring Stone Design in, and they would do the work for you. Master craftspeople working hard to deliver a quality product to customers all over the South Shore. located in Weymouth. And South Shore Savings Bank thought enough of Wavu and Chris to loan them money and to now loan them some more money so that they could improve their facade and make it more attractive to the customers. I spoke. The mayor spoke. The bankers spoke. The politicians spoke. And as the event was wrapping up, I said, wait a second, we haven't heard from the most important person, Wavu. So Wavu stepped to the microphone and he said, my English is not great. I said, Wa, you take your time. Your English is way better than my Vietnamese. And with his son Peter in one side of him and his son Johnson on the other side, his daughter's in high school and she was busy, he told his story. And he told us what it meant to him to have this loan, to be able to do business with a bank, to be able to grow his business. He's now grown his business, by the way, since that loan was made less than 2 years ago by 50%. And he's hired new people. He's created jobs, economic opportunity, and satisfied his customers. In partnership with Chris, his general manager, they are doing what every small business person wants to do their best, serve the customer, and realize their full potential. Ladies and gentlemen, Wavu and Chris Burns, please. Economic opportunity widely shared. Look, my vision for government is very simple. Leave no one behind, and give anybody who is willing to work hard and play by the rules the opportunity to build a full, rich, and fulfilling life. It's not that complicated. We use common sense principles every day in business to satisfy customers. We should use common sense principles every day in government. Third principle, transparency, accountability, openness. Transparency means that you put the state's checkbook online. I campaigned on that principle, and in December of 2011, we put the state's checkbook online so that you, as taxpayers, would know how every dime is being spent. You're entitled to know that. You're the taxpayers. It's your money. mass.gov/open checkbook. Take a look at it, down to checkbook level detail. It's not 100%, but we're getting as close as we can get to it. Openness, transparency, accountability. Government will never re-engage and re-earn the trust that it's lost among its citizens unless it has that fundamental principle at heart every single day. Live within our means, principle number 4. It's not an easy thing to do for those of us in government. We get money in, we spend it, which is why I have said publicly over the past couple of days, as the state's revenues have been better over the past 4 months, $510 million over benchmark, and there's a tendency to spend the money that you get in, particularly when you have it. And there will be reasons to spend it, things that we need to spend it on. But I will make sure, as best I can, using my voice, both advising the governor and the legislature, to put as much of that surplus after June 30th back into the state's rainy day fund as we possibly can. Everybody here thinks about a rainy day fund. Whether you're an individual, a family, or a business, you have to have a savings account. You have to have retained earnings. You have to set money aside for a rainy day or to invest for the future. Government needs to do the same thing. We're one of only 4 or 5 states in the country that has a rainy day fund over $1 billion, but that rainy day fund has to be bigger and more robust because there will be another rainy day someday, even though small businesses are doing better and have more confidence, and we need to make sure that rainy day fund is built up. Live within your means, put money aside for the rainy day. And finally, government needs to think about the fundamental principle that every one of us uses every day. We succeed because we are fast, we are flexible, and we are entrepreneurial. That's the way we succeed in business in the 21st century, innovation economy, internet world, and that's the way government has to operate. Those are the fundamental principles, it seems to me, that make a lot of sense. There are others, of course, but I like to keep it fairly simple. At the end of the day, I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist. My father, Edgar Grossman, was my best friend, my partner, died in 1999. And as we were trying to think about what to put on my father's gravestone, I thought about my father's favorite baseball player, Brooks Robinson, great third baseman for the Baltimore Orioles, probably the greatest player ever to play that position. And one day I ran down to my sister's office. My sister's the treasurer of the company, and my mother was sitting right there. My mother works with my sister. She's 91. She comes to work every couple of days, 2-3 days a week. She handles receivables. She handles collections. Trust me, you would not want to owe Shirley Grossman money. No way. And I said, I've got it. Brooks Robinson, when he came one day after a particularly bad Red Sox season, said to the Bo Sox Club, the Boosters Club, make optimism a way of life. And that was my father. So on my father's gravestone, it says, Edgar Grossman, 1919, 1999. He made optimism a way of life, and I do too. And there are a lot of reasons to be optimistic here in the Commonwealth these days. And the most important reason, we've got men and women who care deeply, who go to work every day, who are bold, who are creative, who are innovative, who are imaginative, and who are trying to create a 21st century economy with the help of financial institutions, 6 of them in this part of the state, with over $40 million, having made over 1,000 loans in the Small Business Banking Partnership. And it's because of you and hundreds of business owners like you who aren't here this morning that the South Shore Chamber and the South Shore area of this Commonwealth is growing, is coming back, and is going to see its best days ahead. Each and every way I'd like to be part of that. I'm proud to be your treasurer. I'm proud to be your colleague. And I'm so honored to be here this morning. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Treasurer. Again, reminder, if you have questions, please raise the cards. We'll have people around the room to collect those and give them to our Grand Inquisitor. This morning's Grand Inquisitor, we're going to try to keep you for about 10 minutes, do a lightning round of questions. Some of them are complex, so you have to keep them to yes-no answers. But our Grand Inquisitor this morning is our own Hingham native. You will all recognize him as the former anchor on WBZ News. He is now a communications consultant. And for those who think you still remember him, but maybe not from TV, he's also an actor performing in many a community theater around the state, and next month appears as Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof at the Regal Music Theater in Waltham. Please welcome Scott Wally.
Dear God, you made many, many poor people. I realize, of course, it's no shame to be poor, but as a small businessman here in the Commonwealth, it's getting harder and harder to make a buck. Actually, that's not exactly in the script, but...
If I were a rich man.
Yeah. You know what, I will... Is it your grandfather who came over?
My grandfather.
Grandfather. I will remember him when I get on stage this July in that role, because, as you know, in Fiddler, it's one of the major themes is the persecution of the Jews and the pogroms, etc. So, real-life history there.
And interestingly enough, my wife played Seidel in a camp production of that back in the summer of 1968, the year I met her.
I saw her, and I thought she was great.
Let me tell you, she is.
I'm sitting next to a young man who just graduated from Washington and Jefferson College with a degree in economics. He said, I'm looking for work now. And I said, you know, what a coincidence. I graduated 40 years ago from Notre Dame with a degree in English, and I'm looking for work. Put her there, pal. Anyway, at least we got Fiddler on the Roof in July. Steve and I probably did the same sort of thing back when I was anchoring the morning news for WBZ. You were chairman of the DNC at the time. Right. I still have my questions from that time somewhere, but they're probably not germane right now. But I do have some questions here for our lightning round. Welcome, Mr. Treasurer. Now, there are several cameras here recording your every word. Are you running for anything?
Am I what?
Running for anything? Or from anything? No.
If I were... Yeah.
Now, you've made it clear that you're very interested in the governor's seat, but you've been a little coy about when you might announce it. Since we're all here today, when are you going to announce?
All right, so I'm leaning strongly toward running for governor in 2014. I'm traveling all over the state, mostly doing my job. That's what I was elected by all of you to do, but I'm leaning strongly in that direction. And if I do, it will be for a couple of very simple reasons. First, I think the job of governor of the Commonwealth is chief executive of the Commonwealth. And I'm very comfortable with that role of chief executive. Chief executives lay out an aspirational vision of what we want to accomplish here. They have a serious conversation with the people of the Commonwealth about our challenges and our problems. They lay out a set of common sense solutions that are going to improve everyone's life. They build a great team, and they're held accountable every day by the citizens and by the media. So it's a role I'd be comfortable playing. I'm going to wait until after the Senate race ends on June 25th before making any formal or final decisions, but I'm leaning very, very strongly in that direction, and probably wouldn't come as much of a surprise to anybody in the room, right?
And a lot of people would be happy to hear your official announcement, I'm sure. Steve, you spoke about, and you've been very outspoken about some of the programs that you would like to see put in place to help small business here in the Commonwealth. When and how does government get in the way of that? What are the biggest obstacles, and how do you change that dynamic?
Well, I think sometimes government can be helpful, and sometimes government does, in fact, have to get out of the way and let the private sector create the jobs and do its thing. When I started to run for this job, I had some roundtable discussions with small business owners all over the Commonwealth. Had a bunch of them. And I took my father's advice. My father said, "You've got one mouth and two ears. Try to use them in that proportion. Be a better listener than talker." So when I said to the business people in those roundtable discussions, I said, "What are the roadblocks and barriers you face, and how can we in government help remove or lower those roadblocks?" People aren't shy. Health insurance is too expensive. Too much permitting, too much regulation. I know the South Shore Chamber has commended the governor on his regulatory reform efforts. We need to do a lot more of that. Permitting and regulation stand in the way and get in the way and cost people time, and they cost people money. Example, if you're a pharmaceutical company and you want to grow build a new factory in Massachusetts to make biopharmaceuticals, you'd be spending $400 to $500 million. So if North Carolina can get you in the ground and open in less than 24 months, and it takes 4.5 or 5 years in Massachusetts, where would you put your $400 or $500 million? That's obvious. So we've got to find a pathway toward getting out of the way and making it more easy, simple, and straightforward for businesses to get done what they need to get done. That doesn't mean regulatory issues aren't important. It doesn't mean we shouldn't have regulation. We need our rules. But we don't need rules that are not appropriate, that are outmoded, outdated, and frankly get in the way. So access to capital, removing those roadblocks and barriers, too much permitting, too much regulation, more technical assistance that small businesses need. I got a great idea, but I don't know how to put a cash flow statement together. So sometimes governments, through the 51 Small Business Development Network offices around the state, all free of charge, can be extremely helpful, and sometimes we get in the way. The answer is get out of the way, let the creative genius of the small business and the business sector shine, and we will create more jobs, more economic opportunity, and we will surge forward. That's sort of fundamentally my philosophy.
You've talked about the Affordable Care Act. A lot of people are convinced that there's no way that that can go through and succeed without crushing small business. What's your reaction to that?
I would respectfully disagree. I think I cited a couple of important reasons why the Accountable Care Act is fundamentally important, and it's right and it's just. Every American needs health care, and we have had close to 50 million Americans who didn't have it. Look, Massachusetts was the laboratory for experimentation and innovation on health care reform. We insure all of our kids, 98% of our citizens, and the cost to the state budget has been fairly minimal. Now, obviously, a recession causes more people to be on mass health and not being employed through their employer, insured through their employer. But the bottom line is, I think we can reform and change how the Affordable Care Act works so that small businesses can flourish. I gave you an example of how they've gotten in the way and not allowed our small business cooperative buying program that Peter is an architect of to flourish. But fundamentally, I think you've got a set of core values and a set of core principles that are not going to crush small business. My business has not been crushed by healthcare reform in this Commonwealth. We're doing well here. We created 105,000 jobs in Massachusetts in the last 27 months. That's better than most states have done. And we're the ones who created it. So I would hope that Washington would pay more attention to how we've implemented it here in Massachusetts and not put excessive and unnecessary burdens on the small business sector of the economy. That would hurt us. We don't need that. That's why I used that example earlier of what Peter and John Hurst have done to try to get them out of the way and let our principles flourish.
What are the chances the governor is going to get his $2 billion tax increase? And if he does, what will that mean for the average taxpayer? What will the landscape look like?
Well, based on what the House and the Senate have done so far, I think there's no chance that his $1.9 billion package will succeed. Look, I think the business community and the elected officials in this Commonwealth all were pretty much unified that this was a year to do transportation reform. This was a year to do transportation investment. We need it. If you're left out or not linked in a 21st century infrastructure and transportation network with commuter rail service to places that don't currently have it, you're trying to do business with one hand tied behind your back, if not both hands. So we need to invest in transportation. The governor is right. We do need to invest in education. Education is the ticket to the future for our kids and for our grandchildren and for everybody else. But if you try to do it all at once, what you wind up doing is laying a burden on the backs of middle-class families, hundreds of thousands of them at a time when the payroll tax already went up by 2% at the first part of the year. And that's a burden that I think the legislature has said we're not prepared to put that kind of a burden on the backs of our citizens. So it's a balancing act. All the things the governor wants to achieve need to be accomplished. The question is, how fast can they be accomplished? And I think the legislature has said, let's go slow, let's be a little more deliberate about it, but let's make sure that the centerpiece of this year's budget is transportation investment and infrastructure reform. That is something the business community has said for years we need, we have to have, and that, I think, is where the legislature has gone and will continue to go. We have a budget on July 1, plus or minus a few days. I think you'll see that that is the centerpiece of it. And many of the, look, education, to give you one example, higher education. We have cut funding for public higher education dramatically over the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And Bob Corrett, the president of UMass, said very simply, he said, look, we'll make a deal with you. If you bring our funding back up to 50%, then we'll freeze tuitions and fees. We all know that the average student lugs around $27,000 of debt, and it's impeding the ability of our young people, our children, to go to public colleges and universities, let alone the private ones. So I think it was a very good proposal, a very good deal. I'd like to see the legislature bring that funding up to 50%. That's going to be a discussion between the House and the Senate. So there are certain things we can do, even at the margin. And if it's not the grand design that the governor has laid out, even though all those principles are worth doing, we may just have to wait another year or two and do it in a slower and more deliberate way so as not to excessively burden middle-class families with excessive taxes that are going to harm them and harm the growth of small business.
Just a quick comment on Greenbush. We, of course, were the recipient of a major transportation project here in recent years. Was that a good thing for us, the Greenbush rail line?
Look, Greenbush is highly controversial. It's never had the ridership that people thought it would have. But I wouldn't necessarily take Greenbush and say, because Greenbush didn't realize its full potential, then every other transportation investment is going down the same pathway. I mean, each one needs to stand on its own, whether it's South Station, rebuilding of South Station, whether it's South Coast Rail, whether it's the Green Line out to Medford. Each one of these is an important investment, and we need to consider the economic benefit, the cost-benefit analysis. Is taxpayers' money being invested in a certain project going to realize the return on the investment? Every one of us uses performance metrics in our businesses every day. Government, and we've done it at Treasury, needs to put performance metrics in place. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it, and if you can't manage it, you're lost. That's where government can learn a lot from the people in this room and in rooms just like this all over the state.
Let's talk crisis management for a moment and pretend that you're the president's best friend. I guess that would be Duvall, I suppose, actually. But what advice would you give President Obama about the problems that he is having here in his second term?
Well, if you're talking about the problems he's experienced in the last couple of weeks, the sort of triple-headed hydra of the AP, the IRS, and Benghazi, look, I think openness and transparency is always the best plan. If you make a mistake, you know something, there's nothing wrong with saying, ladies and gentlemen, I made a mistake. We made a mistake, and we used your resources unwisely. And here's what we've done to fix the problem, and here's what we've done to make sure it never happens again. Be straight, be honest with people, and be open and accessible. Don't try to find ways to obfuscate and give half answers. I'm a big believer, just as in government and in managing government, you need to be open, accessible, and transparent. And I think communication from the White House, the State Department, or any other part of the government needs to be more open, more straightforward, and more direct with people. They would appreciate it, they would respect it. And every citizen, frankly, has a keen understanding of when they're being told a truth and when they're being told a half-truth. And I think the half-truths are what make government way less trustworthy than we'd like it to be. If we're ever going to re-enhance trust in government, ever going to do that, it's got to be by being straight with people and by treating taxpayers and citizens like our partners, not our adversaries.
You know, I in a sense, I've always admired our elected leaders because it almost always means a sacrifice in some other area of their life, be it their family or their business. You know, the old bottom line here. But I don't know when we've been more cynical about our elected leaders in this country and the inability of these men and women that we've put into office to work together for the common good, doing the people's business. Now, you've long been active in politics in many levels, Steve, and I just wondered if you share that that cynicism as a citizen, as a taxpayer, and how can it change? Because it has to change if we're going to move forward.
I don't know that I'm the least cynical person you've ever met, but I'm pretty close to it. I'm not a cynical person. I believe that if you lay out who you are, what you stand for, the kind of leadership you want to provide, and you're straight with people, you look them in the eye, I think voters respect authenticity. They don't want to be played. They want to be told what you're going to do and how you're going to do it in a very straightforward and common sense way. But when we have an opportunity to do something in a bipartisan way, and we don't take that opportunity, then I understand why citizens throw up their hands and say they're back at their old ways. Give you one example just to close. Internet companies are not required to collect sales taxes based on a Supreme Court ruling back in 1992. And a lot of us have believed that that creates a very unlevel playing field for retailers. I mean, we have 500,000 people who work in the retail sector of the economy. Many of you sitting here in this room have a connection to the retail sector one way or another. So why is it that a local retailer selling books or any other product has to suffer a 6.25% unfairness on the playing field simply because you have to charge a sales tax and eBay doesn't? So Main Street Fairness and the Main Street Fairness Act was all about leveling the playing field and Congress changing the rules and requiring internet companies to collect internet sales taxes, exempting companies with sales under $1 million, and providing free software so that they would have the resources to be able to collect easily. What happened? The Senate, they got 69 votes, including 21 Republicans. It was a bipartisan effort in the Senate. And the next day, the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, said, don't like it. And he came up with some, to use my father's phrase, cockamamie reasons not to do it. And I challenged the Speaker to a debate. I said, Mr. Speaker, I know you, and I think we ought to lay out for the people of this country what the benefits, the strengths, and the weaknesses are. We're supposed to pay the tax anyhow. It's a use tax, so you're supposed to put it on your taxes. Most people don't. The benefit to the Commonwealth could be as little as $200 million and as much as $400 million. John Hurst, Peter's partner, knows his statistics cold. But bottom line is, let's level the playing field and let the genius of the retailers in the retail economy compete successfully with the internet. Yet when you find elected officials for political reasons standing in the way of what most people would regard as progress and fairness, then it creates more cynicism and less trust that government can ever get anything done. The goal at the end of the day is to create partnerships. And I, for one, reach out constantly to the business community and to the small business sector in particular, because that's where I get my best ideas. From people who are out there every day creating and innovating companies, hiring people, finding challenges, overcoming those challenges. That's what we do. And this chamber, almost uniquely among chambers in the Commonwealth, its hallmark has been the willingness to step up and say to government officials, you know something, we disagree with you, and here's where we disagree, and we're going to work hard to change rules or to enhance the ability of small businesses and businesses throughout your catchment area to do business and to succeed. And I, for one, want to thank Peter for your leadership. I want to thank Bob for this invitation. I want to thank you, Scott, and I want to thank all of you for giving me the privilege of leadership, those who voted for me and those who didn't. You'll have another chance in 2014, and I hope you'll vote differently then.
State
Thank you
Treasurer
so
Steve
much.
Grossman.
Thank you so much, Scott. We really appreciate it. Treasurer, we know you have ties to the South Shore, having summered down here in Hull, playing baseball, I think, for many years. So we want to make sure you continue to remember the South Shore as treasurer, maybe as governor. And we'd like to present to you a letter from the South Shore native Daniel Webster, framed by Framer's Edge, by the way, our Athena Award winners. But we appreciate you coming down. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Remember, next week, Gabriel Gomez will be addressing us on, I believe, the 30th. Thank you.
That's a beautiful